Picture this. A man walks into a courtroom with a bottle of champagne in one hand and his mistress on the other arm. He is there to finalize his divorce, to throw away his pregnant wife like yesterday's garbage. She is sitting across the room, 6 months pregnant, living in a homeless shelter, $127 to her name. He offered her $10 million to disappear quietly. She said no. What he did not know, what nobody knew, was that 7 years ago, he had signed a single piece of paper, a document he forgot about, a document she did not even know she had. And when the judge read that document out loud, the champagne bottle slipped from his fingers and rolled across the courtroom floor. Because everything he thought he owned, every property, every company, every single dollar, it was already hers. It had been hers for 7 years. This is the story of how a woman lost everything in 72 hours and then discovered she owned an $800 million empire. Stay with me until the end, because the moment she wins, that is when the real twist happens. And trust me, you will not see it coming. If stories like this remind you that karma is real and patience is power, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated? And share this with someone who needs to hear that the quiet ones are always the most dangerous. Now let us begin. The nursery was almost finished. Catherine Miller Harrison stood in the doorway of the spare bedroom, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other holding a paintbrush still wet with pale yellow paint. 6 months pregnant, and she had finally allowed herself to believe this baby would make it. After 3 miscarriages in 5 years, after all those nights crying in bathroom stalls and pretending everything was fine, this pregnancy had stuck. Her daughter was healthy, strong, a fighter, the doctor said, just like her mother. Kate smiled at the half-painted walls, imagining the crib that would go in the corner, the rocking chair by the window, the mobile of stars and moons she had already ordered online. In 8 weeks, her daughter would be here. In 8 weeks, everything would be different. Tonight was her 8th wedding anniversary with Marcus. 8 years since she had walked down the aisle in her mother's wedding dress, certain she was marrying the love of her life. 8 years since she had believed every promise he made. She checked her watch, 6:15. Marcus would be home by 7, and she had a surprise waiting. His favorite meal, beef Wellington with roasted vegetables, a $200 bottle of wine for him, sparkling cider for her. And her gift, wrapped in silver paper on the dining room table, a framed photograph of their first ultrasound with the words "Daddy's Girl." Written in elegant script beneath it, her phone buzzed. A text from her Aunt Ruth. "Happy anniversary, honey. Hope that husband of yours remembers. Men are like golden retrievers, loyal but easily distracted by squirrels." Kate laughed and typed back a quick thank you. Aunt Ruth had never liked Marcus, though she had never said so directly. Ruth had a way of expressing her opinions through animal metaphors and pointed silences. The doorbell rang. Flowers, probably. Marcus always sent flowers on their anniversary. Roses, usually. Red ones. Kate had mentioned once, years ago, that she preferred peonies, but Marcus had a way of hearing what he wanted to hear. She opened the door to find a delivery man holding an enormous bouquet of red roses. She signed for them and carried the flowers to the kitchen, searching for the card. She found it tucked among the stems. "To my wife, 8 years. Here is to 8 more. M short, impersonal. It could have been written by his assistant for all she knew. It probably was written by his assistant, but Kate pushed the thought away. Tonight was supposed to be special. Tonight she would tell Marcus about the nursery, about the names she had been considering, about all the plans she had made for their daughter's arrival. Tonight, everything would be perfect. By 7:30, Marcus still was not home. Kate had called twice. Both calls went to voicemail. She texted, no response. The beef Wellington was getting cold, the candles burning down to stubs. By 8, she made a decision. She would surprise him at the office. Bring him dinner. Be the spontaneous, romantic wife she had not been in years. The pregnancy had made her cautious, protective, always thinking about the baby first. But tonight, she would remind Marcus why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. She packed the food into containers, grabbed her keys, and drove downtown. Harrison and Miller Properties occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower in the financial district. Kate had designed the interior of the building herself, back when Marcus still valued her opinion, back when he still saw her as a partner instead of an accessory. The security guard recognized her and waved her through. She took the elevator to the 15th floor, balancing the food containers in her arms, rehearsing what she would say. "Surprise! I brought dinner. Happy anniversary." The floor was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home hours ago. Only Marcus's corner office showed light, a warm glow spilling through the frosted glass door. The door was slightly open. Kate heard sounds before she saw anything. A woman's laugh, low and intimate. Then Marcus's voice, muffled but unmistakable. Her heart stopped. She pushed the door open, and there was her husband, her Marcus, with a woman who was decidedly not his wife, on the desk Kate had designed for him. Under the company logo she had created 8 years ago when they had nothing but dreams and a $50,000 loan from her father. The woman was young, late 20s, blonde hair, red dress, the kind of body that came from personal trainers and unlimited leisure time. Kate recognized her, Jessica Lane, Marcus's executive assistant, the one who always smiled a little too brightly when Kate visited the office. For one eternal second, nobody moved, the three of them frozen in a tableau of betrayal. Then Marcus looked up, and he smiled, not an apologetic smile, not the panicked expression of a man caught in the worst moment of his life, just a smile, casual, almost amused. "Kate," he'd said, "you're early." Not, "I'm sorry," not, "This is not what it looks like." Just, "You're early." Like she was the one who had made a mistake. Like she was the one who needed to apologize for interrupting. The food containers slipped from Kate's hands. Beef Wellington splattered across the hardwood floor she had personally selected 3 years ago. Jessica scrambled off the desk, smoothing her dress, not meeting Kate's eyes. "I should go," Jessica murmured. "Stay," Marcus said. It was not a request. Jessica stayed. Kate opened her mouth to speak, to scream, to say something, anything, but no words came. Her hands had moved automatically to her belly, cradling her daughter, protecting her from what she was seeing. Marcus stood up slowly, buttoning his shirt with the casual efficiency of a man who had done this many times before. "We should talk," he said, "but not here. Let's go home." Home, the word hit her like a slap. Home was the house she had decorated, the nursery she had just finished painting, the life she had built around this man for 8 years. "Kate," Marcus's voice sharpened, "stop standing there like a statue. Let's go." She went. The drive home was silent. Kate sat in the passenger seat of her own car while Marcus drove, his hands steady on the wheel, his face unreadable. She kept waiting for the explanation, the apology, the desperate promises that it would never happen again. None came. When they pulled into the driveway, Marcus turned off the engine and sat for a moment, staring at the house. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about us, about the future. Marcus, what I saw back there, I want a divorce." The words hung in the air between them. "What?" Kate whispered. "I've already filed the papers. My lawyer says you need to be out of the house by Sunday." "Out? This is my house. I designed every room. The house is in my name." Marcus turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw who he really was. The charm was gone. The mask had slipped. What remained was cold, calculating contempt. "The company is in my name. Everything is in my name, Kate. You have nothing. We built this together." "I built this." His voice cut through her protest like a knife. "You decorated. You threw parties. You smiled at the right people and wore the right dresses. That's not building. That's being useful." He opened his car door. "You were useful, Kate, for a while, but now I needed something different. Someone different." He paused, one foot on the driveway. "You have until Sunday. Take what you can carry. Leave the rest." He walked into the house. Their house. Her house. Kate sat in the car for a long time, her hands on her belly, feeling her daughter kick against her palms. "It's okay," she whispered to the baby. "It's going to be okay." But she did not believe it, not even a little. Friday morning arrived gray and cold. Kate had not slept. She had spent the night on the couch in the living room, unable to face the bedroom she had shared with Marcus for 8 years. He had gone upstairs without another word, and she had heard him on the phone laughing, making plans that did not include her. Now she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers his lawyer had delivered at 7 in the morning. An efficient man, Marcus. He did not waste time. The papers were brutal in their simplicity. No alimony, no property, no stake in the company. Just a clean break. as if their marriage had never existed at all. She needed help. Her first call was to Monica Davies, her best friend since college. Monica was a hospital administrator, practical and level-headed. She would know what to do. "Kate, hi." Monica's voice was strange, tight. "I heard what happened." "You heard how?" "Marcus called me this morning. He wanted to give me a heads up." Monica paused. "Kate, I can't get involved in this." "What do you mean you can't get involved?" "Monica, I'm 6 months pregnant. My husband just threw me out." Marcus is a major donor to the hospital. His foundation funds our entire pediatric wing. If I take your side, if I even appear to take your side, I could lose my job. Kate felt the world tilt beneath her. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm sorry, Kate, I really am, but I have a mortgage. I have kids in private school. I can't risk everything because your marriage fell apart." "My marriage didn't fall apart. My husband cheated on me and is stealing everything we built together." Silence on the other end. "I have to go," Monica said. "I hope things work out for you." The line went dead. Kate stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she called her sister. Diane was 4 years older, married to a banker, mother of 3 perfect children in their perfect suburban home. She and Kate had never been close, but she was family. Family helped each other. "I heard," Diane said before Kate could speak. "Marcus called Dad this morning." "Marcus called our father?" "He wanted to explain his side. He was very reasonable about it, actually. Very calm." "Diane, he cheated on me. I caught him with his assistant on his desk." A long pause. "Are you sure you didn't do something to push him away?" "Men don't just cheat for no reason, Kate. Maybe if you'd been more attentive, more available. You've been so focused on the pregnancy." Kate hung up. She sat at the kitchen table, alone in the house she had made into a home, and felt the last threads of her old life unraveling around her. The baby kicked. "Well," Kate said to her belly, "looks like it's just you and me, kid. Don't worry, I won't teach you to be this useless." Saturday brought worse news. Kate drove to the bank to withdraw money from their joint account. She needed a lawyer. She needed a plan. She needed something to hold on to while her world collapsed around her. The teller's face told her everything before a single word was spoken. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Harrison, this account has been closed." Closed? There was over $2 million in that account. The account holder transferred the funds yesterday evening to a different account. "I'm an account holder. My name is on that account." The teller shook her head slowly. "According to our records, you were removed as a joint holder 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks. Marcus had been planning this for at least 2 weeks. While she was painting the nursery, while she was buying baby clothes, while she was wrapping his anniversary present, she tried the credit cards next. All declined, all canceled. She checked her wallet, $127 in cash. That was it. That was everything she had in the world. The bank manager appeared, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who had clearly seen this before. "Mrs. Harrison, are you all right?" Kate looked at her pregnant belly, her maxed-out debit card, the divorce papers in her purse. "Define all right," she said. The manager pressed a pamphlet into her hand. "Financial resources for women in transition." A phone number, a website. The acknowledgement, unspoken but clear, that Kate was not the first woman to sit in this bank with nothing. "There are people who can help," the manager said softly. "You don't have to do this alone." But Kate was alone, that much was clear. Sunday morning the movers came. 2 men in gray uniforms, accompanied by Marcus's lawyer, a thin man with thin lips and a thin smile. "Mrs. Harrison," the lawyer held up a document, "you have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Anything not removed by 9:30 will be considered abandoned property." "You can't do this. I helped build this house. I designed every room. The deed is in Mr. Harrison's name. You have no legal claim to this property." The thin smile again. "30 minutes, Mrs. Harrison. The clock is ticking." Kate moved through the house in a daze, grabbing what she could carry, her mother's jewelry box. The baby clothes she had been collecting for 3 years. Her laptop with her design portfolio. A folder of old documents her father had given her years ago. Papers she had never bothered to look through. At 9:30 exactly, she stood on the sidewalk. 3 suitcases, $127. 6 months pregnant. No home, no friends, no family willing to help. A neighbor peeked through curtains. No one came outside. The thin lawyer handed her a business card. If you have any questions about the divorce proceedings, you can contact our office. Mr. Harrison wishes you well. The movers closed the door. Her house. Kate pulled out her phone and made the only call she had left to make. Aunt Ruth, it's Kate. I need help. The shelter was nothing like Kate had imagined. In her mind, shelters were dark and dangerous, full of broken people with broken lives. The reality was different, sadder somehow. The Franklin Street Women's Shelter was a converted church, white walls and fluorescent lights, rows of beds in what used to be the sanctuary. Aunt Ruth met her at the door. Ruth Coleman was 55, built like a linebacker, with gray hair she refused to dye and opinions she refused to soften. She had run this shelter for 20 years, through 3 mayors and 2 recessions, and she had seen every kind of tragedy walk through her doors. She took one look at her pregnant niece with 3 suitcases inside. Let me guess, the husband. Kate nodded, unable to speak. They're all the same, honey. Come in. We've got a bed, but you're sharing a room with a woman who snores like a freight train and another one who talks to Jesus at 3 in the morning. Loudly. Does Jesus answer? Kate asked weakly. Honey, if Jesus answered anybody in this place, we'd all be in mansions by now. The room was small, 3 beds crammed into what had once been a Sunday school classroom. The woman who snored was named Betty, 62 years old, escaped from her husband after 30 years of marriage. The woman who talked to Jesus was Maria, younger than Kate, with 2 children sleeping on cots beside her bed. Kate lay awake that first night, listening to Betty snore and Maria pray, feeling her daughter kick against her ribs. This was her life now. This was where she had ended up. Every path that led here had seemed reasonable at the time. Trusting Marcus, giving up her career, putting her name on nothing because he said it was easier that way. Each choice small and logical. Each choice leading her here to a shelter bed with a suitcase full of baby clothes and nothing else. The first week was education. Kate learned how to apply for emergency Medicaid, her prenatal care having vanished along with Marcus's insurance. She learned how to fill out food stamp applications, sitting in government offices for hours, being treated like a number instead of a person. She learned how to stretch a dollar, how to find free diapers, how to survive when survival was all you had left. Ruth taught her the rules of the shelter. No alcohol, no drugs, no men. Everyone does chores. Everyone helps everyone else. Write everything down, Ruth told her during their second day. Every conversation, every date, every transaction you can remember. Courts love documentation. Your memory is worth nothing in front of a judge. Paper is worth everything. Kate started a journal. She wrote down everything she could remember about the company, the finances, her contributions, the initial investment from her father, the design she had created, the investors she had courted, the logo she had designed, the one that still hung on the building Marcus claimed as his own, Harrison and Miller Properties. Her maiden name was Miller. She had insisted on that back when she still believed she was a partner. On the 5th day her father called, David Miller was in hospice. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Maybe weeks left, the doctor said. Maybe days. He had been sick for a year, fighting hard, but the cancer was winning now. Katie girl, his voice was thin, a ghost of what it had been. Ruth told me what happened. Come see me. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. The hospice was across town, an hour by bus. Kate made the journey with her journal in her lap, staring out the window at the city passing by. Her father was smaller than she remembered. Cancer had eaten away at him, leaving behind a frail man in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hissed. But his eyes were sharp. The lawyer's eyes? The eyes that had terrified boardrooms for 40 years. You look tired, he said. I haven't been sleeping well. Because of the shelter? Because of everything. David nodded slowly. He reached for a manila folder on his bedside table. The same folder Kate realized that she had grabbed from the house on Sunday. The document she had never opened. Look inside, he said. She did. The document was dated 7 years ago. Post-nuptial asset allocation agreement. Dense legal language, signatures at the bottom. Marcus's signature, her signature, a notary's stamp. I don't understand, she said. I remember signing this. It was something about protecting the company during a lawsuit. That's what Marcus told you. David's voice hardened. That's not what it is, he explained. 7 years ago, Harrison and Miller Properties had faced a massive lawsuit, a frivolous claim, ultimately dismissed, but potentially devastating at the time. Marcus's lawyer, a man named Peterson, who was equal parts greedy and incompetent, had suggested a solution. Transfer all assets to Kate's name temporarily. She had no public profile. She was clean. Once the lawsuit was resolved, she would sign everything back. But Peterson was an idiot, David said. He drafted the transfer clause wrong. It's not temporary, it's permanent unless both parties sign a reversal document. Kate stared at the papers in her hands. Marcus never asked me to sign a reversal. No, he forgot. He got busy with other things. He assumed you'd do whatever he told you to do. David's eyes met hers. He forgot that pieces of paper have power. Real power. Legal power. What are you saying? I'm saying that according to this document, you own everything. The holding company, the subsidiaries, every property, every account, every dollar. You've been the sole owner of Harrison and Miller Properties for 7 years. You just didn't know it. The room spun around her. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were happy. Because I thought he loved you. Because... David broke off, coughing into a tissue. When he pulled it away, there was blood. Because I was a fool too. Kate looked at the document, her signature, Marcus's signature. $800 million in assets, signed over to her name, forgotten in a drawer for 7 years. Read everything you signed, David said. But more importantly, Katie girl, read everything other people sign that involves you. Your name is on paper you've never seen. Everyone's is. Kate left the hospice with the folder clutched to her chest. She needed a lawyer, a real lawyer, someone who could tell her if this document meant what her father said it meant. She needed hope. For the first time in a week, she had some. Ellen Crawford's office was on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better days. The elevator was broken. The hallway smelled like old coffee and desperation. But Ellen herself was something else entirely. 45 years old, divorced twice. A former prosecutor who had left the DA's office to help women like Kate. Women whose husbands had money and lawyers and every advantage except the truth. She worked on contingency for cases she believed in. And after one look at the post-nuptial agreement, she believed. This is real, Ellen said, her eyes scanning the document for the 3rd time. This is legally binding. Kate, do you understand what this means? My father said I own everything. Your father is right. Ellen set the papers down on her desk. According to this document, you are the sole owner of Harrison and Miller Holdings, all 47 properties, all 12 subsidiary companies, all associated bank accounts and investments. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. Conservative estimate, $800 million, and it's all in your name. It has been for 7 years. Kate felt dizzy. 6 days ago, she had been standing on a sidewalk with 3 suitcases and $127. Now she was being told she was worth $800 million. How was this possible? How did I not know? Because your husband didn't tell you. Because you trusted him. Because the document was filed away and forgotten. Ellen leaned forward. The question now is what we do with this information. The plan was straightforward. File a countersuit. Challenge the divorce on grounds of fraud and deception. Present the post-nuptial agreement in court and demand confirmation of ownership. Marcus will fight, Ellen warned. He'll throw everything he has at this. Money, lawyers, dirty tricks. Are you ready for that? Kate thought about the shelter, about Betty's snoring and Maria's prayers, about her daughter kicking inside her, unaware of the storm raging outside. I'm ready. They filed the papers that afternoon. Court date set for 3 weeks out. That night, Kate allowed herself to hope. She bought a cupcake from a bakery near the shelter, chocolate with vanilla frosting, and ate it slowly, savoring each bite. Tomorrow would be war, but tonight, just for a moment, she would celebrate. The hope lasted 6 days. On the 7th day, Marcus struck back. Ellen called at 8 in the morning, her voice tight with controlled anger. We have a problem. A big one. Marcus's lawyer, a man named Thomas Reed, who charged $2,000 an hour and earned every penny, had filed an emergency motion with the court. The claims were devastating. First, that Catherine Harrison was mentally unstable. Second, that she posed a danger to her unborn child. Third, that she should be placed under psychiatric evaluation. Fourth, that all her claimed assets should be frozen pending that evaluation. He can't do that, Kate said. There's nothing wrong with me. He has witnesses. What witnesses? I haven't talked to anyone. Ellen's silence told her everything. Monica testified that you've had frequent emotional breakdowns, that you've talked about harming yourself. That's a lie. Your sister Diane testified that you've always been unstable, that she's worried about you being a mother. My own sister? There are also two former employees who claim you acted erratically at company events, shouting at people, making scenes. Kate's legs gave out. She sat down hard on her shelter bed, the phone pressed to her ear. None of that is true. None of it. I know, but the judge doesn't know that. Not yet. Ellen's voice softened. There's more. Marcus has filed for emergency custody of your unborn child. He's arguing that a mentally unstable woman living in a homeless shelter is unfit to be a mother. The words hit her like physical blows. Her best friend had betrayed her. Her sister had betrayed her. And now Marcus was trying to take her baby. The court has granted a temporary order, Ellen continued. You'll have to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. The document is under review for authenticity. No action can be taken until the evaluation is complete. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Kate sat in the hallway of the courthouse 2 hours later, 7 months pregnant now, waiting for paperwork, waiting for answers, waiting for anything. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. The walls were institutional green. Everything smelled like floor cleaner and fear. She put her hands on her belly and whispered to her daughter, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mommy tried. Ellen found her there 20 minutes later. We're not done, Ellen said. We're not even close to done. But Kate wasn't sure she believed her. Not anymore. Dr. William Porter had kind eyes. That was the first thing Kate noticed. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and glasses, and the patient demeanor of a man who had spent his career listening to people's pain. The court had appointed him to evaluate her mental state, her freedom, her fortune, her baby. Everything depended on his report. I want you to understand, he said at the start of their first session, that I'm not here to trap you. I'm here to find the truth, whatever that truth is. Kate nodded, her hands folded in her lap. Let's start at the beginning. She told him everything. The marriage, the miscarriages, the slow erosion of her identity as Marcus took more and more credit for her work, the affair, the eviction, the shelter. Dr. Porter listened without interrupting. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, his handwriting neat and precise. I have to ask these questions, he said during their second session. Do you hear voices? Only my Aunt Ruth, and she's not a voice in my head. She's just loud. Dr. Porter smiled. Any thoughts of harming yourself? No. Any thoughts of harming your baby? Never. She's the only thing keeping me going. What about harming your husband? Kate paused. Honestly, sometimes I imagine throwing his champagne collection into the pool. Does that count? I think that counts as remarkably restrained, given the circumstances. 3 sessions, 5 hours of questions, psychological tests with names like MMPI and Rorschach and Beck Depression Inventory. Every session, Kate told the truth, painful, embarrassing, uncomfortable truth, about her fears, about her failures, about the choices that had led her to this moment. The hardest part was admitting how much she had given up. I was a good designer, she said during their final session. I was talented, people hired me, people paid me, and I walked away from all of it because Marcus said the company needed me more. Do you regret that? Every day, but not because of the money or the career. Because I lost myself, I became an extension of him instead of my own person. And I let it happen. I chose it. Dr. Porter set down his pen. Mrs. Harrison, in my professional opinion, you are not mentally ill. You are not a danger to yourself or your child. You are a woman going through an extremely difficult situation, responding with remarkable resilience. Relief flooded through her. The people who testified against you, Dr. Porter continued, describe someone I don't recognize in these sessions. Either they were lying or they saw a version of you that no longer exists. What will you tell the court? The truth? That you're sane, stable, and more than capable of being a mother. He paused. I've been doing this work for 30 years, Mrs. Harrison. I've evaluated hundreds of people in crisis. Most of them break down. Most of them blame everyone else. You've taken responsibility for your choices while fighting for what's rightfully yours. That takes strength. The report was submitted on a Thursday. By Friday, the emergency custody motion was denied. The psychiatric hold on the document was lifted. The case was back on track. Ellen called with the news. "It's a slam dunk," she said. "The document is verified." Multiple handwriting experts confirmed the signatures. Marcus can't wriggle out of this. Court date rescheduled, 2 weeks out. Kate visited her father that evening, wanting to share the good news. He was weaker now, sleeping more than he was awake. But when she told him about the evaluation, about the upcoming trial, his eyes lit up. "You're going to win, Katie girl," he whispered. "You're going to take back everything." She held his hand for a long time after he fell asleep. 2 weeks, just 2 more weeks. She could survive 2 more weeks. David Miller died on a Tuesday. Kate was at his bedside when it happened. She had been reading to him from the newspaper, stories about politics and sports and nothing that mattered, just the sound of her voice filling the silence. He squeezed her hand, one last time, weak but deliberate. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Your mother would be proud of you too." Then he closed his eyes. He did not open them again. Kate sat with him for an hour after the machine stopped beeping. The nurses gave her space, understanding somehow that she needed this time. This final moment with the man who had given her the one weapon that could save her. The funeral was 3 days later. Kate wore black, her belly straining against the fabric of the dress Ruth had found at a thrift store. She stood at the graveside, watching them lower her father into the ground, feeling alone in a way she had never felt before. And then Marcus appeared. He came with Jessica, of course, the mistress in designer black, sunglasses hiding her eyes, looking appropriately somber for a funeral she had no business attending. Marcus approached Kate at the reception, moving through the crowd of mourners like he belonged there. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "David was a good man, misguided but good." Kate said nothing. Marcus leaned closer, his lips near her ear. "Drop the case," he whispered, "or I'll make sure your baby is born in a prison hospital." He straightened, smiled at a passing relative, and walked away. Jessica smirked at Kate's belly as she followed. That night, Kate sat in the shelter, staring at the wall, trying to process everything. Her father was dead. Her husband had threatened her at the funeral. The trial was in 3 days. Her phone rang. "Ellen." "Kate, we have a problem." Of course they did. There was always another problem. Marcus's lawyers found something. The notary who witnessed the document, a man named James Wheeler, he lost his license 4 years ago. Fraud conviction. What does that have to do with anything? They're arguing the entire notarization is invalid, that because Wheeler was later convicted of fraud, any document he witnessed is suspect. Is that true? Ellen was quiet for a long moment. It's a reach. Wheeler's fraud conviction was for real estate transactions. The post-nuptial agreement is a personal asset transfer. Different legal category, but the judge might not see it that way. What are our chances? The silence stretched. 50-50, Ellen said finally. Maybe less. Kate hung up and sat in the darkness. 8 months pregnant, father dead, best friend and sister turned against her, fortune hanging by a thread. 50-50. In the next room, Maria was praying loudly to Jesus, the same prayer she said every night, asking for salvation and strength and a way out of the darkness. For the first time, Kate prayed too. She did not know if anyone was listening. She did not know if it would help, but she had nothing left except hope and a folder full of documents and a baby growing inside her. "I can't do this alone," she whispered into the darkness. "I need help, please. Anyone. Just help." No answer came, but somehow the act of asking made her feel less alone. Tomorrow would be the fight of her life. She would be ready. Ruth arrived at 6 in the morning with a garment bag. "Don't ask where I got it," she said. "Let's just say a woman at the shelter has a sister who has a friend who works at Nordstrom and owes me a favor." Inside was a navy blue maternity dress, simple, elegant, the kind of thing a professional woman would wear to an important meeting. Kate put it on and looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. "You look like $1,000,000, Ruth said. "That's about $799 million less than what I'm going for." Ruth laughed, a sharp bark that echoed off the tile walls. That's my girl. Now eat something. You're going to need your strength. Ellen picked her up at 8. They went over the strategy one more time in the car, the city sliding past outside the windows. The notary issue is our biggest weakness, Ellen said. Reed is going to hammer on it, but I found something that might help. Wheeler's fraud conviction was specifically for real estate transaction documents. The post-nuptial agreement is a personal asset transfer. Different legal category, different standards. I can argue it's not covered by his conviction. Will the judge buy it? Depends on the judge. Ellen glanced at her. We got lucky. Evelyn Reed is presiding. She's tough, but fair. She doesn't like theatrics, and she doesn't like bullies. And Marcus? Marcus is definitely a bully. Let him be himself. It'll help our case. The courthouse was swarming with reporters. Someone had leaked the story. Probably Marcus, Kate thought. He loved publicity, loved being the center of attention. He probably expected to win and wanted the whole world to watch. Headlines flashed across phone screens as they pushed through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust toward her face. Mrs. Harrison, did you know about the document? Are you really homeless? Is it true your husband is dating his secretary? Ellen shielded her, pushing through the crowd toward the courthouse doors, and then Kate saw them. Marcus stood at the top of the courthouse steps, posing for photographers. He wore a suit that cost more than most people's cars, his hair perfect, his smile practiced. On his arm was Jessica, in a red dress that screamed, "Look at me," louder than any headline. And in Marcus's hand was a bottle of champagne. Cristal, $200 a bottle, the same brand he had been drinking on their anniversary when she was painting their daughter's nursery. He was planning to celebrate, in public. Before the verdict was even announced, Ruth muttered something under her breath that Kate was glad she could not hear. The audacity, Ruth said. The absolute audacity. Kate straightened her shoulders. Let him celebrate, she said. He won't be smiling for long. She walked up the courthouse steps, past her husband and his mistress and his champagne, and through the doors into the building where her future would be decided. Courtroom 4B smelled like wood polish and tension. Judge Evelyn Reed presided from the bench, a woman in her late 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had a reputation for cutting through nonsense, for seeing past expensive suits and slick arguments to the truth beneath. She noticed the champagne in Marcus's hand as he entered. Her eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch. She said nothing. The gallery was packed. Reporters, spectators, people who had read the headlines and wanted to see the drama unfold in person. Ruth sat in the front row, her arms crossed, her expression daring anyone to challenge her. Marcus and Jessica took their seats at the plaintiff's table. Thomas Reed, his lawyer, arranged papers with theatrical precision. Kate and Ellen sat at the defendant's table. Just two women against a billion-dollar machine. All rise. The formality began. Opening statements set the stage. Reed went first, his voice smooth and confident. Your Honor, this is a simple divorce case complicated by a desperate woman and a fraudulent document. My client, Marcus Harrison, is a self-made entrepreneur who built his empire through his own genius and hard work. Mrs. Harrison was a homemaker, a valued partner, certainly, but not a business partner. The document in question is a relic of a legal maneuver long since resolved, notarized by a convicted fraudster, and never intended to be permanent. He paused for effect. We ask the court to dismiss this fantasy and allow my client to move on with his life. Ellen rose slowly. She did not pace. She did not gesture. She simply stood and spoke. Your Honor, the petitioner says Mrs. Harrison was just a homemaker. Let me tell you what that homemaker did. She walked to the evidence table and picked up a document. She invested $75,000 of her inheritance to fund the company's first project. She designed that first project, a renovation that sold for 400% profit. She designed every project for the first 5 years. She hosted every investor dinner. She cultivated every relationship. She created the company's logo and visual identity. Ellen held up another document. And 7 years ago, Mr. Harrison, in his infinite wisdom, transferred everything to her name and never bothered to take it back. She looked directly at the judge. We're not here to divide assets. We're here to confirm ownership. The evidence parade began. Ellen presented the original company registration. Harrison and Miller Properties. Miller, the judge noted, Mrs. Harrison's maiden name. She presented bank records showing Kate's $75,000 initial investment. She presented testimony from Frank Henderson, a former project manager who had worked for the company for 18 years. In the early days, it was all Mrs. Harrison, Henderson said. Catherine. She had the eye. Marcus was great at getting permits and managing subcontractors. But Catherine was the one who made the places special. She picked every paint color, every tile, every light fixture. We didn't call it staging back then, but she was the one who furnished the first few show homes herself. That's what sold them. And as the company grew, Ellen asked, her role got bigger. She hired and managed the whole interior design team. Nothing got ordered, no blueprint was finalized without her signing off on the aesthetic side. Marcus handled the money and the schedule, but Catherine, she created the product. Everyone on the inside knew it. Then came the document itself. Ellen presented the post-nuptial asset allocation agreement. She presented expert testimony confirming the signatures. She presented the certified letter Kate had sent to Marcus 7 years ago, stating she considered the transfer permanent. Mr. Harrison, Ellen said, approaching the witness stand where Marcus had been forced to testify, did you ever respond to your wife's letter? I never saw any letter. The certified mail receipt shows it was signed for by your assistant at the time, Sarah Mitchell. She must have filed it. Marcus shifted in his seat. I was busy. I had important. So you're telling this court that you were too busy and too important to read a letter from your wife regarding $800 million in assets? That's not what No further questions. From the gallery, Ruth whispered loudly enough for 3 rows to hear. Too busy to read mail. Too busy to be a husband. Probably too busy to find his own. Ruth, Kate hissed. Judge Reed's lips twitched, almost a smile. The notary issue came next. Reed argued passionately that the fraudulent notary invalidated the entire document. Ellen countered calmly. The notary's fraud conviction was for real estate transaction documents. The postnuptial agreement is a personal asset transfer. Different legal category, different standards. The document stands. Then came the surprise. Ellen called Sarah Mitchell to the stand. Sarah was 32, well-dressed, nervous, but determined. She had been Marcus's assistant for 5 years before being fired 6 months ago. I signed for every piece of mail that came to Mr. Harrison's office, Sarah testified. I put Mrs. Harrison's letter on his desk personally. I watched him look at it. He said, deal with this, and handed it to his accountant. He read the first page. I saw him. Reed objected. Hearsay, speculation. Overruled, Judge Reed said. The witness is describing what she directly observed. Sarah continued. After I was fired for mixing up a lunch reservation, I kept records. I always kept records because I knew who Mr. Harrison really was. She produced a USB drive. This contains copies of internal memos, financial records, and emails showing that Mr. Harrison knew about the asset transfer. He discussed it with his accountant, and he chose to let it ride because, and I quote, Kate's too stupid to ever figure it out. The courtroom erupted. Marcus was on his feet. She's lying. She's a disgruntled employee. Judge Reed banged her gavel. Mr. Harrison, you will sit down or you will be removed from this courtroom. Marcus sat, the champagne bottle, forgotten on the table beside him, sweated in the warm courtroom air. Judge Reed called a 30-minute recess, the longest 30 minutes of Kate's life. She sat at the defendant's table, hands folded, trying to breathe. Ellen had done everything possible. The evidence was strong. The witnesses were credible. But judges were unpredictable. Laws were complicated. $800 million could buy a lot of complications. Ruth brought her water. Kate could not drink it. Across the room, Marcus huddled with his lawyers, gesturing angrily. His face was red. His perfect hair had come undone. For the first time since she had known him, he looked scared. Jessica sat alone at the end of the table, scrolling through her phone, already distancing herself from the disaster unfolding around her. She had not looked at Marcus once since Sarah Mitchell's testimony. Finally, the bailiff called them back to order. Judge Reed returned to the bench. Her face was stone, but there was something in her eyes, something that made Kate's heart beat faster. The judge did not speak immediately. She arranged her papers. She adjusted her glasses. She let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. Then she began. In my 25 years on this bench, I have seen many things. I have seen greed. I have seen betrayal. I have seen arrogance so profound it defied comprehension. She paused. But rarely have I seen all three combined with such spectacular contempt. Not only for the law, but for basic human decency. Not only for a business partner, but for a wife. Not only for a woman, but for the mother of an unborn child. She looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Harrison, you came into this courtroom today with a bottle of champagne. You brought your mistress to your own divorce hearing. You were so certain of victory that you planned to celebrate before the verdict was even announced. Marcus's lawyer put a hand on his arm. A warning, stay quiet. Let me tell you what I see when I look at you, Mr. Harrison. I see a man who built a company, or rather, a man who built a company with his wife. She invested the seed money, $75,000 from her mother's inheritance. She created the designs that made your properties valuable. She cultivated the relationships that funded your expansion. Her name is on the company. Her vision is in every property you have ever sold. Marcus opened his mouth to object. His lawyer's grip tightened. And then, Judge Reed continued, when you faced a legal threat, you transferred everything to her name. You told her it was to protect the family. You told her to trust you. And she did, because that is what wives do. They trust their husbands. She picked up the certified letter. 7 years ago, your wife sent you this letter. She stated clearly, in writing, that she considered the transfer permanent. It was delivered to your office. It was signed for by your assistant, the same assistant who testified today that she watched you read the first page. She set the letter down. And what did you do, Mr. Harrison? You chose not to respond. You chose to ignore it because you believed your wife was, and I quote from your own email, too stupid to ever figure it out. The courtroom was silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even the sound of breathing. You were wrong, Mr. Harrison. You were catastrophically, spectacularly, historically wrong. Judge Reed straightened in her chair. The post-nuptial asset allocation agreement is hereby declared valid and binding. The notary issue raised by the defense is immaterial. The fraud conviction pertained to real estate transactions, not personal asset transfers. The document stands. Kate felt her heart stop. All assets currently held under Harrison and Miller Holdings, its subsidiaries, and all associated properties, including but not limited to 47 residential and commercial properties, 12 subsidiary corporations, and all associated financial accounts, are hereby confirmed to be the sole legal property of Catherine Miller Harrison. Judge Reed removed her glasses. She looked at Marcus one final time. All assets are now hers, Mr. Harrison. They always were. You simply forgot to read the paperwork. She paused. Perhaps next time you will be less busy. The champagne bottle slipped from Marcus's nerveless fingers. It did not shatter. It hit the marble floor with a dull, pathetic thud and rolled slowly across the courtroom, past the lawyers, past the reporters, until it came to rest against the witness stand where Sarah Mitchell's USB drive had destroyed his lies. Nobody moved to pick it up. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. The gallery burst into whispers that built into a roar. But Kate heard none of it. She was watching Jessica. Jessica Lane stood up slowly. She smoothed her red dress. She picked up her designer purse. And without a single glance at the man who had promised her marriage in a corner office, she walked toward the door. Jessica. Marcus's voice cracked. Jessica, wait, we can figure this out. I have connections. Jessica stopped. She turned. And she looked at Marcus Harrison with an expression that would haunt him for the rest of his life. You have nothing, she said. You are nothing, and I am not stupid enough to stay on a sinking ship. She walked out. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. From the gallery, Ruth's voice carried across the stunned courtroom. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call karma. Instant delivery, no shipping fee. For the first time in the entire trial, Judge Evelyn Reed laughed. Then she banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Ellen hugged Kate so hard she could barely breathe. You did it, Ellen whispered. You actually did it. Kate could not speak. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were shaking. Everything was shaking. She had won $800 million, 47 properties, Every subsidiary, every account, every penny that Marcus had spent 20 years accumulating. It was hers. It had always been hers. She looked across the courtroom at the man who had been her husband. Marcus sat slumped in his chair, staring at nothing. His lawyers were packing their briefcases, already distancing themselves from the loss. The champagne bottle lay forgotten on the floor, a monument to his arrogance. For one moment, Kate almost felt sorry for him. Then she remembered the sidewalk, the suitcases, the $127, the shelter bed, the psychiatric evaluation, the threats at her father's funeral. The pity vanished. She turned and walked toward the exit, the crowd parting around her like the Red Sea. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust toward her face. Questions flew from every direction. "Mrs. Harrison, how does it feel? What will you do with the money? Do you have a message for your husband?" Kate paused at the door. She turned back to face the reporters. "Ex-husband," she said quietly. "And yes, I do have a message." She looked directly into the nearest camera. "Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. That is when she becomes the most dangerous creature on earth." She turned to leave, and then she felt it. Warmth between her legs. A sudden gush that soaked through her dress. She looked down. Blood. So much blood. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh God, no. No, 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 not now. Please, not now." Her legs buckled. The world tilted. Ellen caught her before she hit the marble floor. "Call an ambulance," someone screamed. "She's bleeding. The baby." The last thing Kate saw before the darkness took her was the courtroom ceiling, spinning above her like a carousel. The last thing she heard was Ruth's voice, cutting through the chaos. "Hold on, Katie, hold on. Don't you dare give up now." Then there was nothing, beeping. That was the first thing Kate heard when she woke up. The steady beep of monitors, the hiss of machines, the quiet bustle of a hospital at work. She was in a bed, white sheets, white walls, fluorescent lights humming overhead like mechanical angels. Her hands moved automatically to her belly, flat, empty. Panic exploded through her chest. "My baby." She tried to scream, but her throat was too dry, the words coming out as a broken whisper. "Where is my baby? Where is she?" A nurse appeared beside her, kind face, gentle hands, the kind of hands that had delivered news both wonderful and devastating. "Mrs. Harrison, you're awake. That's wonderful. You're in Franklin General Hospital. You've been unconscious for about 8 hours. My baby, please tell me. Your daughter is fine." Kate stopped breathing. "She's in the NICU. She's small, 5 pounds, 2 ounces, but she's stable. She's strong." The nurse smiled. "She's a fighter, just like her mother." The tears came then. Kate could not stop them, did not want to stop them. They poured down her face, soaking the hospital pillow, releasing months of fear and pain and desperate hope. Her daughter was alive. Her daughter was alive. "I want to see her," Kate whispered. "Please, I need to see her." "Soon. The doctor wants to check on you first. You lost a lot of blood." The surgery was... The door burst open. Ruth stood in the doorway, her eyes red, her face pale, looking like she had aged 10 years in 8 hours. "Katie," her voice broke. "Oh, thank God. When you collapsed in that courtroom, when there was blood everywhere, I thought..." She could not finish the sentence. "The baby?" Kate asked. "Perfect." Ruth crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed Kate's hand. Tiny but perfect. All her fingers and toes. The most beautiful little scream you ever heard when she came out. Scared the hell out of everyone in the operating room. Ruth laughed through her tears. "The doctor said it was placental abruption. Something about the stress, the blood pressure, everything you have been through. They had to do an emergency C-section. 37 seconds from the first cut to delivery, some kind of hospital record, apparently. But she's okay? She's perfect, Katie. She's absolutely perfect." The doctor came 20 minutes later. A woman named Dr. Sarah Wells, calm and professional, with the steady hands of someone who had performed this surgery hundreds of times. She explained the procedure, the recovery timeline, the week Kate would need to spend in the hospital. Kate heard none of it. All she could think about was her daughter who was alive, her daughter who was waiting for her. Finally, they wheeled her to the NICU. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and the gentle whir of machines keeping tiny lives alive. Rows of incubators lined the walls, each one holding someone's miracle. And there, in the incubator by the window, was hers. She was so small, so fragile. A tiny person with tiny hands and a tiny nose, wrapped in hospital blankets that seemed to swallow her whole. A pink cap covered her head. A monitor was attached to her chest, tracking every heartbeat. "Can I hold her?" Kate whispered. The NICU nurse helped her, carefully lifting the tiny bundle and placing her in Kate's arms. The weight was nothing. 5 pounds felt like 5 ounces, but the warmth was everything. The realness, the undeniable proof that after everything, after all the betrayals and battles and desperate prayers, something beautiful had survived. "Hey, little one," Kate whispered. "It's Mommy, I'm here. We made it. We actually made it." The baby's eyes opened, dark blue like all newborns, but already Kate could see hints of green around the edges. Her eyes, her mother's eyes, passed down through generations, now looking up at her from the smallest, most precious face she had ever seen. "What are you going to name her?" Ruth asked from the doorway. Kate looked at her daughter, this miracle who had survived everything. The stress, the fear, the shelter, the courtroom, the collapse, the surgery, all of it. This tiny fighter who refused to give up. "Hope," Kate said. "Her name is Hope." Ruth wiped her eyes. "That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect." 6 months later, Kate stood at the window of the corner office on the 15th floor. Her office now, her building, her company. Harrison and Miller Properties no longer existed. In its place was Miller and Hope Development. New name, new leadership, new culture. The toxic environment Marcus had built was being dismantled piece by piece. The yes men were gone. The favoritism was gone. The fear was gone. In their place, Kate had built something better. Fairer, more honest. A company where people were valued for their work, not their willingness to flatter the boss. She had established the David Miller Foundation for Women Escaping Financial Abuse, free legal clinics in 12 cities, emergency funds for women with nothing, counseling services, job training programs. Everything she had needed and could not find, she was now providing for others. Hope sat in a designer crib in the corner of the office, a crib Kate had designed herself. 6 months old now, healthy and growing, with her mother's green eyes and her grandfather's stubborn chin. Ellen Crawford visited that afternoon. "I have news," Ellen said, settling into the chair across from Kate's desk. "Several pieces of news, actually. Start with Marcus. His appeal was denied. Every counterclaim was dismissed. The judge called his arguments, and I quote, frivolous to the point of absurdity." Ellen smiled. "He's done. Completely and permanently done." "Where is he now?" "Working for a small construction company in Ohio. A legitimate one, ironically. Reportedly living in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat." Ellen's smile widened. "His new girlfriend dumped him last week when she found out he was broke. Left him with the electric bill and a note that said, and I quote, 'I'm not stupid enough to stay on a sinking ship.'" She used Jessica's line. Apparently it made the rounds. Someone recorded Jessica's exit and posted it online. 14 million views and counting. Kate should have felt satisfaction, triumph, vindication. Instead, she felt something closer to peace. Marcus Harrison was already fading from her memory, becoming a cautionary tale instead of a wound. What else? Monica Davies was fired from the hospital last month. Turns out she was embezzling from the pediatric fund Marcus donated to. The FBI is involved. Kate felt nothing. Monica had made her choice. And your sister Diane called the office 17 times this week. She wants to reconcile. Something about family being important and bygones being bygones. What did you tell her? That you were too busy building an empire to take calls from people who testified against you in court. Ellen shrugged. I may have also mentioned that karma has excellent memory and terrible timing. Kate laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange. Good. There's one more thing, Ellen said. A reporter from the New York Times wants to interview you. About your story. About the foundation. About what you've learned. What would I even say? The truth. That's always been your best weapon. The interview was published the following month under the headline, "The Woman Who Owned Everything and Didn't Know It." It went viral within hours. Millions of views, Thousands of shares, comments from women around the world who had been through similar situations, who were still trapped, who needed to know that escape was possible. You know what I learned? Kate said in the article. 3 things. First, never sign anything you don't understand. Read every document, keep every copy. Paper is power. Second, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone convince you that your reality isn't real. Third, and most important, never ever underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. That's when she stops being afraid. That's when she stops playing nice. That's when she becomes the most dangerous thing in any room. The letters started arriving after that, hundreds of them, then thousands. Women who had been through what Kate had been through, women who were still trapped, women who needed help, who needed hope, who needed to know they were not alone. Kate read every single one, and she helped as many as she could. On the anniversary of the trial, Kate stood at the window of her new penthouse, bought with her own money, in her own name. Every document read, every clause understood, every signature witnessed. Hope slept in her arms. 1-year-old now, babbling her first words, taking her first steps, growing into a tiny person with opinions and preferences and a stubborn streak that made Ruth laugh and say she was definitely David Miller's granddaughter. Below, the city sparkled in the evening light, millions of people living their lives, fighting their battles, making their choices. And there on the horizon was the building where everything had changed. The sign had been replaced months ago, her name and her daughter's name. Together, permanent, real. Your grandpa was right, Hope, Kate said softly, watching the lights come on across the city. Paper is worth everything. She kissed her daughter's forehead. And patience, she smiled. Patience is worth even more. Hope stirred, making a small mound that might have been a grief cement, or might have been a dream, or might have been the beginning of a word. It didn't matter. What mattered was this moment, this warmth, this tiny miracle in her arms, and the empire at her feet, and the knowledge that she had earned both. Kate had lost everything in 72 hours. Then she had discovered she owned everything. And in the end, she had found something more valuable than $800 million. She had found herself. She had found her strength. She had found her daughter. And she had found this truth that every woman who has ever been underestimated eventually learns. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. The patient ones are always the most powerful. And the ones with nothing left to lose are always, always, always the ones who win.